house was always full of movement, yet somehow she managed to stay invisible. While adults walked around giving directions, carrying trays, answering phones, and dealing with daily noise, the maid's daughter moved like a whisper across the rooms. She followed her mother quietly, keeping close enough to feel safe but far enough not to disturb anyone. Most days, people barely noticed she was there at all. Her mother worked long hours in that house. Every morning they reached before the sun had properly risen. The girl would sit near the entrance, rubbing sleep from her eyes as her mother gathered supplies for the day. She never complained. She understood more than most children her age. Her mother worked hard so both of them could survive. If that meant sitting quietly for hours, she accepted it. The main living room was the center of the house. A tall window let sunlight spread across the floor in smooth lines. Near the window stood a polished piano, shining like a treasure. The girl's eyes always drifted toward it. She felt something pull her gently every time she looked at those keys. She didn't dare touch it. Even standing close felt like crossing a line. But she watched it, studied it, admired it. She learned its shape by heart. When guests came, the house transformed. Laughter echoed from the hallway. Expensive perfumes filled the air. And the sound of heels clicking on the marble floor became almost musical on its own. The girl would sit in a corner during these gatherings, legs pulled close to her chest, observing every detail. She liked watching people, their expressions, the way they moved, the changing moods in the room. She wasn't trying to judge anyone. She was simply curious. Everything seemed louder and brighter when strangers visited. But even then, no one really spoke to her. She was the maid's daughter, a quiet shadow who didn't fit into the lively conversations of adults. Sometimes a guest smiled at her politely before turning back to their group. Other times she received a confused glance, as if someone wondered why a child was even present. She didn't mind. She knew her place. She never expected attention. Her mother, however, always kept an eye on her. Between cleaning rooms, organizing shelves, and answering calls from the family, she would pause to make sure her daughter had eaten or wasn't tired. The girl never asked for much. A simple snack, a few minutes of rest, maybe an old phone to watch videos on. Her mother gave her what she could. They were a team, even if life didn't give them many choices. The girl spent a lot of time humming. It was a small habit she didn't even realize she had. When she was bored or nervous or lost in thought, her voice filled the space quietly. She imitated sounds she heard around the house, the rhythm of footsteps, the clinking of dishes, even the patterns in the rain outside. She liked turning simple moments into melodies. It was her way of feeling calm. Sometimes, when her mother cleaned the living room, the girl stayed near the piano. She never touched it, but she watched videos on her phone showing how people played. Her phone was old and slow, the screen scratched and the sound crackling, yet she didn't complain. She paid attention to every detail of the videos. How fingers pressed the keys, how hands moved like water, how the music rose and softened. She practiced the movements in the air, barely lifting her fingers above her lap. No one noticed. It was their small secret, hers and the piano's. One afternoon, while she repeated a movement she saw in a video, the employer's older child walked into the room. He stopped for a moment, hearing the girl hum a tune that matched the silent gestures of her fingers. She didn't see him at first. When she finally noticed, she froze. She felt her heart fill with fear, worried she was caught doing something wrong. The child only looked curious, not angry. But the girl lowered her eyes and hid her hands in her lap, trying to appear as still as possible. The older child didn't say anything. After a few seconds, he simply left. But the moment stayed in her mind for hours. She couldn't understand why someone would pay attention to her humming. She worried her mother might get scolded because of her. That's why she stayed even quieter the rest of the day. In truth, her world was built around silence. Not forced silence, but the kind that grows naturally when you learn to stay unnoticed. She didn't argue, didn't interrupt, didn't complain. She just watched. And somewhere in that quiet watching, she trained her ears to notice tiny shifts in sound others ignored. She picked up rhythms easily, remembered melodies instantly, and felt emotions in music more deeply than words could explain. Her mother often wished she could give her daughter proper lessons, a real instrument, maybe even a chance to explore the arts. But wishes like that seemed too large for their small life. Rent came first. Food came first. Work came first. Dreaming felt like a luxury. Still, whenever the girl hummed something beautiful, her mother's tired face softened for a moment, imagining a different future. Some evenings, when the employer's family gathered for dinner, the maid's daughter stayed in the kitchen with her mother. The kitchen workers joked and laughed, sometimes sharing small snacks with her. She liked that room more than any other part of the house. It felt warm, busy, alive. She belonged there in a way she didn't feel she belonged in the grand living spaces. But the piano room always called her back. Not with noise or sparkle, but with a quiet pull. She didn't dream of applause or fame. She simply loved the way music made her feel inside, light, present, full of something she couldn't put into words. The family who owned the house believed the piano was mainly decoration. Once in a while, a tutor came for lessons, but those sessions were more like obligations than passion. The kids learned because they were told to. They practiced because someone reminded them. Their relationship with the piano was polite but distant. The girl, though, felt connected to it in a way she didn't understand. She admired the smooth keys that looked like they carried secrets. She respected the silence around it. She imagined the sound it could make if someone played with kindness instead of pressure. There were moments when her mother caught her staring at the piano. The mother would smile gently and shake her head, silently reminding her not to touch anything. And the girl obeyed. She never wanted to trouble her mother. She never wanted to cross a boundary that could risk their only source of income. Still, her fascination grew every day. It was a quiet flame, steady and patient. As the months passed, the girl became even more comfortable in the house, but always in her soft, careful way. Workers greeted her with smiles. The employer's younger child sometimes shared snacks with her. The older child remained mostly distant but no longer stared when she hummed. The mother trusted her daughter enough to let her sit alone in the living room while she cleaned nearby. And in all that time, the piano stayed untouched by her hands, but never untouched by her imagination. Every song she hummed came from the melodies she wished she could play. Every movement of her fingers came from hours of studying videos and practicing in the air. Every moment she spent near the piano strengthened her quiet dream. No one else saw the small spark growing inside her. No one understood how deeply she loved music, or how naturally it flowed through her without any training. She didn't know it yet, but the day was coming when the quiet little girl in the background would step forward. A day when she would finally touch those keys. A day when her hidden gift would make everyone stop and listen. For now, though, she remained the gentle shadow beside her mother, patient, unnoticed, and quietly carrying a talent that had not yet been heard. The days in the big house all seemed to blend together, yet each day added something new to the quiet world of the maid's daughter. She rarely spoke unless someone asked her something, and even then, her voice came out soft and gentle. She wasn't shy in a fearful way. She simply preferred to watch and listen. It was as if her thoughts moved faster when her mouth stayed closed. What no one realized was that while she sat silently in corners or walked behind her mother, her mind was constantly working. She paid attention to every sound, every tune, every rhythm that floated through the house. If someone played a video clip on their phone, she memorized the melody. If a commercial played from the living room TV, she picked up the jingle almost instantly. Her ears caught things most people ignored. Her old phone became her little window to a world she wished she could touch. The phone wasn't in good condition, its battery drained fast, the camera didn't work, and sometimes the screen froze for minutes. But none of that mattered to her. As long as she could watch videos, she was happy. She searched for tutorials on how to place fingers on piano keys, how to play simple melodies, how to read beginner sheet music even though she couldn't understand much of it yet. When her mother polished the family's wooden shelves or vacuumed the carpets, the girl sat on the floor, copying the hand movements she saw in the videos. She lifted her fingers gently, pretending the polished tiles were keys. She practiced slowly, repeating each motion until she felt it was right. No one taught her. She watched, learned, and repeated. There were moments when she got frustrated. Her fingers wouldn't move fast enough, or she forgot a step she had just learned. But instead of giving up, she took a deep breath and tried again. Something inside her kept pushing her forward. She didn't know what to call it, but she felt it every time she hummed or practiced imaginary notes. Her mother sometimes noticed her quietly moving her fingers in the air. The mother would smile gently and pat her head, a look of both pride and worry in her eyes. She knew her daughter loved music deeply, but she also knew she couldn't provide the lessons or instrument her daughter deserved. One evening, after a long day of cleaning, the mother sat on a kitchen stool and looked at her daughter, who was tapping her fingers on the edge of a chair. "Are you practicing again?" her mother asked in a tired voice. The girl nodded, not wanting to distract her mother from resting. "You like music that much?" the mother asked. The girl nodded again, this time with a small shy smile. Her mother didn't say anything else, but a deep sigh escaped her. She wanted more for her daughter, more than the walls of a house where she worked. She wanted her daughter to have choices she never had. But wanting and being able to give were two very different things. The girl didn't see the sadness in her mother's eyes that night. She only saw love. So she hummed a soft tune, hoping it would cheer her mother up, even if only a little. The next morning returned them to the routines they knew so well. When the girl walked into the living room, the piano stood in its usual place, shining silently. She looked at it the way some people look at the sky, as something beautiful but unreachable. Sometimes the employer's children held lessons with a tutor. The tutor spoke with a calm voice, tapping her pen on the sheet music as she instructed the kids. The girl always stayed far back but listened closely. She absorbed every explanation, every correction, every little detail. The children learning the piano didn't seem very interested. They played each note like a task, not a joy. Their fingers pressed the keys because they had to, not because they wanted to. The girl, however, watched with excitement hidden deep inside her. She imagined herself sitting at the piano, touching the keys with purpose, not fear. She imagined making melodies that carried her feelings, melodies that told stories without words. One afternoon, while the house was quieter than usual, she sat on the living room floor. Her mother was cleaning the upstairs rooms, so the girl had a few minutes alone. She placed her phone on the ground and pressed play on a beginner tutorial. The music filled her ears, and she lifted her fingers as if the floor beneath her were a full keyboard. She lost herself in the movement, her hands following the rhythm without hesitation. She didn't realize someone was watching her. The employer's younger child stood behind the doorway, holding a snack plate. He didn't say a word. He didn't want to startle her. He only listened, observing the way she hummed perfectly in tune with the video, the way her fingers moved naturally even without an instrument. After a few seconds, the child walked away quietly, unsure how to react. He had never seen someone play music without actually playing an instrument. It didn't make sense to him, but it fascinated him. Later that day, when her mother came downstairs, she noticed her daughter looking unusually thoughtful. "Everything okay?" the mother asked. The girl nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. She wondered if she had gotten in trouble. She worried someone might think she was acting out of place again. She didn't want to cause problems. She didn't want her mother to face scolding because of her hobby. But no one said anything. The day went on normally. In the evenings, after everyone left the living room, the family's pets sometimes wandered around the house. A small cat often walked up to the girl and rubbed against her legs. She enjoyed those simple moments. They made her feel less alone. She hummed softly to the cat, who seemed perfectly content listening. The more time she spent in that house, the more she sharpened her skill without even realizing it. Her sense of rhythm improved. Her sensitivity to sound grew stronger. She learned to guess what note came next in a melody, even when she had never heard the song before. Her mind worked like a quiet recorder, remembering everything. Her mother noticed something else too. Whenever the girl hummed, workers around the house stopped for a moment, listening unconsciously. It wasn't dramatic or obvious, but it happened often. The girl didn't know her own voice had that effect. She simply hummed because it made her feel calm. One day, while helping her mother fold laundry in a spare room, the girl asked a question she had never dared to ask before. "Do you think I will ever learn music for real?" she whispered. Her mother paused, the folded shirt still in her hands. "I think you already know it in your heart," the mother said carefully. "But one day, maybe one day, life will give you a chance to learn it with your hands too." The girl didn't fully understand what her mother meant, but the words stayed with her. They felt like a small promise, one she would hold on to. The household remained busy throughout the months. Guests came and went. Parties filled the rooms with noise. Workers hurried from one task to another. The girl kept observing everything, learning from the environment even when she wasn't trying. Her hidden talent continued to grow, like a quiet seed waiting for sunlight. She didn't know it yet, but life was slowly guiding her toward a moment that would change everything. A moment where her invisible years of practice would finally show themselves. A moment where her voice and her fingers would no longer remain secrets. All she needed was one chance. One moment where someone would hear not just her humming, but the gift behind it. And without her realizing it, that chance was already closer than she imagined. The day that changed everything started like any other. The maid's daughter woke up before sunrise, rubbing her eyes as her mother packed their things for another long shift at the big house. She walked quietly beside her mother, holding onto the strap of her small bag that carried her old phone and a packet of biscuits. She didn't know that by the end of the day, her life would feel different. When they reached the house, it was already busier than usual. Workers rushed in and out, carrying trays, decorations, and piles of fresh flowers. The living room furniture had been rearranged, and the large dining table was covered with elegant cloth. The maid's daughter stood near the entrance, watching the movement with wide eyes. Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder. "Stay close today," she said softly. "There will be many guests." The girl nodded. She always stayed close anyway. As the morning passed, the house grew louder. Music played from speakers, people spoke quickly on phone calls, and the kitchen staff prepared dishes that filled the air with warm smells. The girl found a small corner near the living room where she could sit without getting in anyone's way. From there, she watched everyone work. A large piano stood in its usual place near the window. It had been cleaned so well that it almost glowed. The girl paused and stared at it longer than usual. Something about the day made her feel nervous, though she didn't know why. By afternoon, guests began to arrive. Cars pulled up one after another. The living room filled with laughter, greetings, and conversations. The girl stayed near the wall, her hands folded behind her back. She liked watching people from a distance the same way she always did. Then she noticed someone she hadn't seen before. A man with gentle eyes and a calm smile stood near the piano, speaking to the family. He didn't dress like the guests who wore bright and shiny clothes. Instead, he wore simple clothing and carried a small notebook in his hand. The girl didn't know it yet, but he was a respected music teacher who had been invited for the event. The family had planned a small performance to impress their guests. A young relative had been chosen to play the piano, a girl from a comfortable life used to parties and attention. She looked confident as she walked toward the piano, but her eyes revealed nervousness. The music teacher encouraged her softly. "Take your time," he said. The room grew quiet as everyone turned toward the piano. The maid's daughter leaned forward slightly, the way she always did when music was about to begin. She felt a small flutter inside her, excitement mixed with curiosity. The young performer placed her fingers on the keys. She took a deep breath and started playing. But the first note came out wrong. The second didn't match the rhythm. The third was even worse. A few guests exchanged awkward looks. A cough broke the silence. The girl on the piano tried again, but her hands shook, and the notes sounded uneven. She looked down, embarrassed. The room felt tight, uncomfortable. The maid's daughter felt her heart sink. She didn't know the girl well, but she understood how it felt to want something to go right and instead watch it fall apart. The performer finally stopped playing. She stood up quickly, trying to hide the disappointment in her face. Everyone hesitated, no one knew what to say. The maid's daughter stood near the doorway, her small hand clutching the edge of her shirt. She looked at the piano again. She wished she could help, but she knew her place. She was just the maid's daughter. No one would care what she thought. But the music teacher noticed her. He had seen her watching earlier. Something in her eyes caught his attention. Something quiet but full of depth. Something he recognized from years of teaching. He walked toward her slowly, giving her space. "You like music, don't you?" he asked in a gentle voice. The girl froze. She didn't expect anyone to speak to her. She lowered her eyes and nodded once. Her mother, who was nearby arranging plates on a side table, looked up in surprise. She walked closer, worried her daughter might have done something wrong. Before the mother could say anything, the girl whispered something so soft that only the teacher heard. "Can I play for my mom?" The teacher's expression shifted. Not shocked, not confused, but moved. He knelt slightly to her level. "Would you like to try playing?" he asked. Her eyes widened. She shook her head quickly, afraid. Her mother stepped forward, ready to decline. But the teacher raised a hand gently. "No pressure. I just want to know if she feels the music." The girl hesitated. Her heart beat fast. She had never touched a real piano in her life. She only practiced on tabletops, chairs, and air. What if she made mistakes? What if people laughed? But something inside her whispered that she should try. She thought of all the times she watched videos, all the imaginary notes she practiced, all the nights she hummed herself to sleep. She wasn't sure she could do it. But she wanted her mother to hear her. Her mother placed a hand on her back. "You don't have to," she whispered. The girl took a deep breath. She stepped forward slowly. The room grew silent again. People looked around, confused. Some had seen her before and recognized her as the maid's daughter. Others wondered what she was doing walking toward the piano. The girl climbed onto the piano bench carefully, her legs trembling slightly. She didn't rush. She placed her small hands on the shiny wood first, feeling its smoothness. For a moment she didn't move. Her mother watched from across the room, hands pressed to her mouth, fear and pride mixing inside her. The music teacher stood nearby, not touching the piano, not giving directions, just watching. The girl lowered her fingers onto the keys for the first time in her life. She closed her eyes. The entire room waited. She took a deep breath and pressed down on the keys gently. A soft sound filled the room. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't trained. But it was honest. She started to play the melody she always practiced in silence. The one she made from her humming. The one that helped her fall asleep at night. The one she imagined the piano would sound like if it ever allowed her to touch it. Her hands moved carefully at first, searching for the right notes. Then her fingers found confidence. They remembered the movements she practiced hundreds of times on chairs and tabletops. The melody grew stronger. Guests stopped talking. Workers froze in place. The music teacher's eyes widened. Her mother's tears fell before she even realized she was crying. The maid's daughter had never played a piano before, but somehow her hands moved like they had waited their whole life for this moment. Her touch was soft yet full of feeling. She played not to impress anyone, but because she wanted her mother to hear the song she carried in her heart. The room didn't just go silent. It softened. It breathed. It listened. As she reached the final notes, her fingers slowed. The melody faded gently into the air. She lifted her hands from the keys and placed them quietly in her lap. For a moment no one moved. No one spoke. Not even the sound of a breath could be heard. Then slowly someone clapped. And another. And another. Within seconds, the entire room filled with applause. Loud, heartfelt, and full of disbelief. The girl lowered her head shyly, overwhelmed. Her mother rushed forward and wrapped her arms around her, holding her as if she might disappear. The music teacher took a deep breath, shaken in a way he didn't expect. He looked at the child in front of him and saw what no one else had noticed before. This wasn't just natural talent. This was a gift, and everything in her quiet life was about to change. The room was still echoing with applause when the maid's daughter slowly rose from the piano bench. She wasn't used to people looking at her. and now dozens of eyes followed her every movement. Her small fingers, which had just created such a beautiful melody, trembled slightly as she stepped back. She felt overwhelmed, unsure of what she had done to deserve so much attention. All she knew was that she had played from her heart, nothing more. Her mother's arms wrapped around her before she could take another step. The embrace was tight, warm, and full of emotion. The mother kept whispering, "I'm so proud of you." Even though her voice shook, tears rolled down her cheeks without hesitation. She had seen her daughter practice in silence for years. She had heard her hum songs that never reached their full shape. But seeing her touch a real piano and create something so beautiful was more than she ever imagined. The guests, who moments earlier had been chatting loudly, stood quietly now, watching this emotional scene unfold. They seemed touched by the sincerity of the moment. There was something powerful about watching a child, who had always blended into the background, suddenly reveal such an extraordinary talent. It humbled everyone. The music teacher stepped forward carefully, as if approaching a delicate moment. He had heard many young musicians in his life, some trained from childhood, others pushed into lessons by their families. But this child was different. Her playing didn't sound polished, but it felt alive. Each note carried emotion, honesty, and a sense of longing. That was the kind of connection he spent years trying to teach, yet she had found it on her own. When the mother finally loosened her embrace, the teacher knelt in front of the girl again. He didn't rush. He didn't speak loudly. He only smiled gently. "You played beautifully," he said. The girl lowered her eyes shyly, her hands now gripping the fabric of her dress. She didn't know how to respond. Compliments weren't something she heard often. "Have you ever taken lessons?" he asked. She shook her head. "Has anyone ever taught you even the basics?" he continued. Again she shook her head. The teacher pressed his hand against his chest for a moment, overwhelmed by the truth of it. "Then what I heard just now," he said softly, "is something very rare." The mother watched quietly. Part of her wanted to feel happy. Another part felt cautious. She didn't want false hope for her daughter. Life had already shown them enough struggles. But before the mother could speak, the music teacher turned toward her respectfully. "Your daughter has a gift," he said simply. The mother swallowed hard. She only watches videos," she said. "She practices with her hands in the air. We can't afford lessons." The teacher shook his head gently. "Talent like hers doesn't come from money. Comes from the heart. And if you allow me, I would like to teach her." Silence filled the space again, but this time it wasn't heavy. It was full of possibility. The guests nearby exchanged surprised glances. They whispered among themselves, marveling at how unexpected the situation was. A child who wasn't even part of the wealthy family had just captured everyone's attention with a single song. The girl stepped closer to her mother, unsure of what all this meant. She didn't understand much about music teachers or lessons, but she felt something warm inside her. A small spark of hope. The employer of the house, who had been watching everything quietly, approached with a softened expression. "If she wants lessons," he said, "we will support it. She can practice here whenever the piano is free." The mother's hand flew to her mouth again. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. The room seemed brighter somehow. The girl looked from her mother to the teacher, unsure what she was supposed to say or do. All she wanted was for her mother to be happy. "Do you want to learn?" the teacher asked gently. The girl hesitated, not because she didn't want to, but because she was afraid of wanting too much. Finally, she nodded. That simple nod brought a smile to her mother's tired face, one of the warmest smiles the girl had ever seen. The teacher stood and addressed the room. "This child played her heart just now," he said. "It's not often you see talent appear so naturally." The guests nodded, some still in disbelief. A few even clapped softly again. After the guests returned to their conversations, the living room slowly regained its usual noise, but something in the air felt different, more hopeful, more alive. The girl stayed close to her mother, still shaking a little. She didn't know what the future held, but she felt lighter than she had in a long time. Later, When the crowd thinned and the excitement faded, the music teacher sat at the piano and motioned for her to join him. "Let's try something simple," he said. The girl sat beside him, her feet barely touching the floor. He guided her carefully, showing her where to place her fingers. She followed each instruction with full focus. Her movements were hesitant at first, but they became steady with every attempt. "You learn quickly," he said. She didn't reply, but her shy smile said everything. He played a small melody and asked her to try it. She listened closely, then placed her fingers on the keys and repeated it with surprising ease. Her mother watched from across the room, holding a tray of glasses she had forgotten to deliver. She stood frozen, unable to look away. Pride filled her eyes, mixed with disbelief. As the girl continued practicing, the workers passing by slowed down to watch. Some leaned on door frames. Others paused mid-task. Even the youngest child of the house walked closer, curiosity pulling him forward. The girl played a second melody, then a third. Each one sounded a little clearer, a little more confident. The teacher barely had to correct her. "You feel music," he said. "That's something you can't teach." The girl didn't fully understand the compliment, but she felt the kindness in his voice. When they finished practicing, the teacher looked at the mother. "Bring her whenever you can," he said. "I'll teach her as much as she wants to learn." The mother could only nod, overwhelmed. As evening approached, the guests began leaving. The house returned to its slower rhythm. The girl helped her mother clean up, moving with more energy than usual. She hummed as she worked, softly at first, then louder. Her humming wasn't just a habit anymore. It was a sign of something new growing inside her. A spark. A dream. Before they left for the night, the girl walked past the piano again. She paused and gently touched one of the keys. The sound was soft but full of meaning. Her mother stood behind her silently. "You played beautifully today," the mother said. The girl looked up and whispered, "I played for you." The mother's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they weren't tears of worry or exhaustion. They were tears of hope. The girl didn't know how far this journey would take her. She didn't know how hard she would need to work or what challenges would come. But she knew that for the first time someone believed in her. And for the first time she believed a little in herself too. The big house no longer felt like just a place she followed her mother into. It felt like the start of something important. A new beginning. A door opening. A small voice finally being heard. And all of it had started with one simple question. One question that came from her heart. "Can I play for my mom?" The applause in the room did not fade quickly. It rolled through the space like a warm wave, rising and falling as people tried to steady their emotions. For a moment, the girl simply sat still on the piano bench, her small hands resting on the keys while her heart thudded against her chest. She had never imagined a moment like this. She never thought so many eyes would be on her, not with judgment, but with awe and kindness. Her mother stood only a few steps away, her hands pressed tightly to her face. Tears streamed from her eyes, not from sadness but from the kind of joy that felt too big to contain. She had always known her daughter held something special inside her, something delicate and bright, but she never dared to dream that this hidden spark would one day be seen by so many. The guests slowly regained themselves, yet their eyes stayed glued to the girl. Some wiped their faces quietly, surprised at how deeply her music had reached them. Others exchanged whispers, amazed at how someone so young, someone who had never taken a single lesson, could play with such emotion and skill. Even the children in the room stood still, their usual restlessness replaced by fascination. The music teacher who had been invited to the event was among them. She stepped closer, trying not to startle the girl. Her expression held a mix of disbelief and excitement, the kind she only felt when she discovered someone with natural, unpolished brilliance. She had spent years teaching students who practiced for hours, yet few had moved her the way this quiet child did in just a few minutes. "You have a beautiful gift," she said gently. The girl lifted her eyes, unsure if she was allowed to speak. Her voice had always been soft, but now it felt almost too small for the moment. She nodded, unsure what else to do. The teacher smiled warmly. Did you learn all of that on your own? The girl hesitated, then nodded again. I watched videos and practiced on the table, she whispered. Her mother let out a soft, shaky laugh behind her, a laugh filled with pride and disbelief. The teacher placed a hand on her shoulder, careful and light. I would like to teach you properly. Not someday, not maybe. I want to start helping you now. You have something rare, something worth shaping. And it would be my honor to guide you. She glanced at the mother, hoping she wouldn't misunderstand. At no cost. This is my gift to her and to you. The mother shook her head slowly, overwhelmed. She had spent years working quietly, trying to give her daughter the simplest things: food, shelter, safety. Music lessons had always felt like an impossible dream, too big, too far. Now, someone stood before her offering something she had never dared to ask for. Are you sure? The mother managed to say, wiping her cheeks. Absolutely, the teacher replied without hesitation. Her talent deserves a chance to grow. The employer of the house, who had been watching everything unfold, stepped forward as well. His voice carried a different kind of softness than usual, one touched by realization. From today onward, your daughter can use this piano whenever she wants, he said. If she needs practice time, if she needs a space, this house is open to her. He paused, looking at the mother with a respectful nod. You have worked hard for years. It's time we give something back. The mother's eyes filled again, but this time she didn't hide it. She looked at her daughter, who stood quietly with her fingers still curled from playing. She walked over, gently pulling the girl into her arms. The child hugged her tightly, pressing her face into her mother's shoulder. After everything, the long hours, the quiet days, the moments when both wondered if life would ever change, this single moment felt like the opening of a brand new door. The guests began to mingle again, but most of them continued glancing toward the girl, discussing her performance with amazement. Some approached to compliment her, speaking kindly so she wouldn't feel overwhelmed. She answered with shy nods and small smiles, still trying to process everything. As the evening went on, the music teacher spoke with the employer, organizing details for future lessons. She wanted to begin as soon as possible. She believed in nurturing talent while the inspiration was still fresh, and this girl had shown a depth she rarely saw even in older students. The mother watched all of this with a heart that felt too full. She remembered times when they barely had enough to get through a month. She remembered her daughter asking about musical instruments with quiet curiosity, never insisting, always understanding. She remembered the nights the child sat by the window, tapping invisible keys on her knees while humming melodies only she understood. Now those invisible melodies had stepped into the light. When the event ended and most guests had left, the large living room fell into a calmer silence. The girl walked back to the piano, placing her hand gently on the smooth surface. She still couldn't believe she had played it, really played it. Her mother joined her, resting a hand on her back. You were amazing today, she said softly. The girl looked up at her with the same shy innocence she had always carried. I wanted to play something for you, she said. I always wanted to. Her mother bent down, brushing a strand of hair from her daughter's face. You gave me more than music today. You gave me hope. Her voice cracked slightly, but she kept smiling. I am so proud of you. The girl wrapped her arms around her mother's waist, holding her tightly. The moment felt warm, safe, and life-changing. The teacher approached one last time before leaving. I'll see you tomorrow, she said gently. We'll begin your lessons right away. The girl nodded eagerly this time, her earlier shyness replaced by excitement. Her mother thanked the teacher again and again, overwhelmed by the kindness she had received. As they stepped outside to return home, the world around them felt different. The same streets, the same lights, the same air, but something inside them had shifted. The mother walked with a lighter step, and the girl walked with a spark in her eyes. They had no idea what the future held. They didn't know how far this journey would take them, or what new challenges would come. But for the first time, they felt like they were walking into something brighter. The story didn't end with applause. It began with it. A new chapter had opened, one built on courage, opportunity, and a simple wish whispered in a quiet voice. "Can I play for my mom?" And from that moment, nothing would ever be the same again.